the book about the Great Reset. You were
Right.
phenomenal during COVID at really being one of the people who was blowing the whistle on this whole insanity, and how there was something bigger at play here. And this was
Yeah.
not simply about how deadly this virus actually was, or whether or not the lockdowns were as effective as they should have been, but that there was clearly a bigger plan being implemented by the ruling elite. Can you want to talk about that a
Oh,
little
yeah,
bit?
absolutely. So, the conclusion I've come to is effectively that the means that these elites use are actually the ends that they seek. So whenever they're claiming that you need to be locked down, you need to be vaccinated, need to be masked, you need to keep social distancing. This is really what they're after: is to lock you down, to put you in a mask, to social distance you, and to vaccinate you. This is really the end game. It isn't about COVID. And similarly with climate change, for example, it's the same thing. The means that they're using or attempting to use or beginning to implement are the ends being sought. They don't want you driving cars. They don't want you having an air conditioner. They don't want you even burning logs in your backyard. Now I read today, they don't want you to have pets. There's just an insane amount of stuff. And it's really, this is authoritarianism or totalitarianism. When it becomes global, we're talking about a totalitarian order that's being ushered in. And I talk about that in great depth in The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty. And I treat all this from a libertarian perspective. It is not conspiratorial or conspiratorial rant. It's not a conspiracy theory. I actually tie all these things down with sources, and everything is very tightly documented what's going on.
Yeah, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's just a conspiracy.
It's a conspiracy
that is
fact.
happening. Yeah,
yes, that's
just,
right.
And whatever. I mean, I don't know. I think the term conspiracy theory, which was first coined in the wake of Jack Kennedy's assassination to kind of demonize the people who dared. These crazy people with all of their conspiracies. And by the way, we're going to seal the records of what happened forever, and you'll never be able to know what it is. It's like, yeah, that term is and don't get me wrong, there are some goofy conspiracy theorists out there, but the truth is that elites do conspire. That is a fact, and we're living through many different conspiracies right now over the last few years. And there are things just like from lower levels to higher levels, but selling the war in Iraq was a conspiracy. They all conspired to push these lies. Killing the lab leak story was a conspiracy. We can look through Fauci's emails that we have now and see that he conspired with other scientists to misrepresent the information so that people wouldn't think it came from the lab. And why? Well, because
he was behind the lab, behind the production of the virus in that lab. He had funded Echo Health in Boston, who funded the Wuhan laboratory. So he was totally connected to it. His hands are so dirty. It's unbelievable that he's not in jail, except for the fact that we're under this particular regime.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Exactly. And it's something, it really is like a lot of this stuff. It's like, it's fascinating because we're living through it. But you're like, if this was in a novel and we hadn't lived through any of this, you would kind of be like, this is far-fetched, man. Like, no one's going to be, it's like, oh, it turns out the guy who was the face of the pandemic response actually made the virus. You're like, dude, this is just getting a little too out there. If this were just like, if you submitted this to a publishing company, but like, you're like, oh no, all of that. You're like, and you got the college kids with pacifiers. Like, come on, what type of world is this? No one's going to believe this is real. And yet
it was so crazy, Dave, that I ended up writing a novel during the pandemic. I wrote a novel called Thought Criminal, which is about, another type of pandemic. And just to get people to think about what was happening. If you put things in fictional framework, and then people can extrapolate from that to their own experience. That's what I try to do in that novel.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, because when you look at it just as a story, you kind of see what's going on sometimes in a more clear way than when you're just documenting what's actually happening.